chapter took a hard left at the end. It's going along, it's talking about the story club and all the different things in the stories, and Anne's telling Marilla about it and talking about all these different things, and Marilla's like, do the dishes. It's like this jolt, shuddering stop, which is hilarious. And that's one of the things to do when you want to make something in a story memorable, is that you frame it with something shocking. And so here you have Anne talking about her story club, and then all of a sudden Marilla is like, "Do the dishes." So that's just like a shocker to me, and it's fun, and it's writing can be hard. Um, Different people have different voices. Anne pointed that out. She said, "Oh yeah, Diana just kills people because she doesn't know what to do with them." And there's some authors who've been accused of that. It's like, well, I just got tired of this character and so I killed them off. Um, I read an article once about, there's a book, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, where somebody took the book Pride and Prejudice and rewrote sections of it and inserted zombies. So it takes this great romantic story, which which is a great book, and I'll probably read it later. But it's read it, yeah, read it in the channel later. But it's this great romantic book with lots of logic and lots of planning and conniving, and it's a great book. And
Is
then
it a great book?
it is a great book. It is widely regarded as one of the greatest works of Western literature.
I hate it.
Lolly hates it. Um, but that's okay. Anyway, so someone went and they rewrote bits of it and they put in zombies. And so instead of you having these women trying to find husbands, you have these women trying to find husbands while killing zombies. And the author of the edit, where, putting in the zombies, said that they painted himself into a corner because at one point he killed off a character and then he realized that he needed him 20 chapters later. And so he had to rewrite around that because, we have this character who you needed because he was central to the plot of Pride and Prejudice, but being killed off at the first, chapter 10 of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, you can't use him in chapter 30. So that was an interesting thing. And so you have Anne kind of leading things because that's who she is. She's very much a leader and follow me. And her flair for the dramatic just feeds into that. So everyone, all the girls are following her, and there's a suggestion of, hey, maybe we should let boys in, and Anne's like, no. And so they all write their stories and they send them off. And one of the things that they complain about is that they don't, the adults who, when they hear the stories, just laugh at the wrong spots. And there are several instances of this that creep up in literature. One of the one that comes to my mind is there was an author of dark satire by the name of Franz Kafka. And he's so well known that his name became an adjective, Kafkaesque, to describe this overwhelming, sad, tyrannical situation where everything is just wrong and terrible and crushing. The thing is that he thought what he was writing was funny. And so here you have, one of his famous stories involves someone who's a prisoner, who's on trial, but he's not told what he's on trial for. And so here he is, he has to put up this defense against this government, and he doesn't know what he's on trial for, and this whole thing is grim. But the funny thing is that when Kafka wrote this and was reading it to his friends, he was just howling in laughter the whole time. So often people don't realize that they don't that people don't see things the way that they see them when they're writing it. One of the things I've noticed in the book is that there's a tendency to use what's called purple prose, which has a lot of extra descriptions. And whenever Anne is describing something, or when Anne is the focus, the book actually tends to go into that, where the descriptions become richer, or not even just richer, they become overblown. And so you have Anne talking about things, and, she's stringing along adjectives and adverbs to describe something. And, the alabaster brow. Okay, alabaster is a white rock, like marble, like limestone, but it's famous for being white. And the brow is the forehead. So the alabaster brow is the white forehead, but alabaster brown sounds so much better than a white forehead. And it connotes elegance and sophistication and somebody who doesn't have to go out in the sun and work for a living. So you have the person with the alabaster brow. She mentioned purple eyes. Purple eyes, yeah, they aren't really a thing except in anime.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor is said to have had purple eyes, but they were a very pretty royal blue. Anyway, yeah. Liz Taylor. Lolly's not a fan of Liz Taylor either, right?
Nope.
Nope. Anyway, so Anne has all of these inventions and all of this overly characterized things. Wow. Must have been 40 years ago, 30 years ago, at science fiction conventions. There was a book that was written and published in a fanzine. So, way back in the day, people used to write stuff up and typewriter it. And then they would Xerox these things together and mail them out and send them out. And this thing was bad to read. I mean, it was just painful, and the prose was overwrought and the grammar was bad. And people would pass it around, and the trick was that you read until you laughed. And so some people would get 4 or 5 words. Some people would just look at the sentence and just break down laughing. But the thing is that the person wrote it very serious. So tones can be misinterpreted. As I said, Kafka thought he was funny. Yeah, you never know. And yeah, be careful of overusing adjectives and adverbs and such. I mean, there's a place for it, but at the same time, English is a wonderful language, and it's colossal. It is enormous. It's elephantine. That's it. English is an elephantine language, and it has a plethora of words for. Yeah, Wally's laughing at me now. Because I'm using the big words that Anne wanted to use when she grew up, or that Anne likes to use, but she gets mocked for using. Let me tell you something that doesn't change when you grow up. When if you get into the habit of using large words, people will just look at you funny, and they're like, no, you're just putting on airs. It's like, no, these are the words that are in my head trying to come out. I admit that I struggled there for elephantine. Plethora was a little bit closer to the surface. Elephantine, great word. Means like an elephant. So big and huge. So English is an elephantine language. It is large and cumbersome. Actually, the best description I think I've heard of the English language is it's like the game Go, where the rules are simple. It's very simple to be a beginner. It is incredibly hard to be a master. And Go was the last game for computers to beat people at. Computers were beating people at chess left, right, and center for years. They were beating them at poker because, eventually the odds will win out over bluffing. And, you can start to figure out when people bluff. And then there was Go. And Go is a language, Go is a game where you have this large grid board and you put down white rocks and black rocks. One person puts down white, one person puts down black. And if you circle the other person's rocks, you take them. And then if they circle yours, you take them, theirs. And so this game plays out until there are no real moves left. And so the board is set up with a pattern. And then you count how many rocks there are and how many spaces are contained by those rocks. And that's the score. So that's what the score is. And the thing is that it doesn't, this is one of those things that the computers just had problems with because there isn't really a pattern. And the funny thing is that there was a computer program that was just beating people senseless in Go. And somebody sat down and analyzed it and figured out the program's weakness. And then they were able to go and beat the program. And that didn't happen with chess. Once the computer started beating people on a regular basis, the computer always won. And now they have computers that constantly beat other computers, that constantly beat other computers, that constantly beat humans. So it's like the best computer is 3 or 4 generations of excellence removed from the best person. So a competent chess player will beat me every time. Every time. A master will beat the competent person every time. The middling computer will beat the master every time. A better computer every time. Finally, you have this computer that beats all of those every time. And, it would probably throw me down in 30 moves or something like, well, there's a minimum amount of moves it takes to be beaten in chess. And you actually have to work to get less than that. But, the computers are just incredible at these things. But Go was one of the ones where it was beaten because Go is described as a conversation. And it's minutes to learn and a lifetime to master. And English is like that. English is one of those, anyone can speak a reasonable amount of English because English has so much stuff taken from other languages. 50 minutes of conversation, just about any language, you'll pick up some cognate that you recognize. Because English is just pulled in all of these words into it. But at the same time, because it has all of this, you won't know. I mean, it'll be hard to master. For instance, right now I'm reading a book on my own called Ulysses by James Joyce. And this is dense and thick. It is mud. It is concrete. But at the same time, the words are poetical, to quote Anne. They're poetical. They are transubstantiating. They change into forms because James Joyce was just this master of the language, and he picked pieces from different places and made up his own words. Joyce, like Shakespeare, just started making up words. But the thing is that because English is formed off of building blocks, you can take things and put them together in different words. So I was reading through the book once, and I was like, what does this word mean? It was Kenshite. It's like, what's a Kenshite? So I went and I Googled it, and all of the references pointed to Ulysses, and none of them really defined what it was. It was just like, oh yeah, that's in this passage. And I was like, this is not an answer. This is not an answer. I do not Google. I do not use Bing to not get answers. I want answers. And so I was like going through, and I was reading it, I was flipping around forwards and backwards, and it's like, oh, this is a variation of another character's name. And the character was, I can't remember his first name. His last name was Kench. And so he was a professor at the university, and he was usually referred to by his first name. But if you go back 50, 100 pages, he's blah, 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 Kench. And so his students were the Kenshites because they studied under Kench. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That was a lot of effort for a very little bit of reward. But anyway, English is complex. The story, hard left. Um, writing is good. One of these days, I'll finish. I have a story that I'm working on, and I'll finish it and maybe read it. And yeah, we'll see.